Welcome to Decentralized News, our weekly coverage of the major headlines in Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency space. I'm your host, Piter, joined as always by Aussie. There's a lot to get to, so let's jump right in. Please do your own research. This is not financial advice. If you enjoy the content, please consider liking and subscribing, commenting. It does mean the world to us. So the big story still is the ETFs, not the NFTs, like I said last week, but it's really the selling that's going on and how the price has not reacted kind of the way everyone has expected. At the end of last week, there was a story that came out about a lot of it coming from the FTX was dumping Bitcoin. They sold about $1 billion worth of the grayscale Bitcoin from their bankruptcy. But that was supposed to be over. And now we still have grayscale dumping. They had sold $2 billion. So grayscale sold 52,000 Bitcoin since the ETF launches. That does not count today, Monday. And they sent an additional 15,000 to Coinbase Prime that I saw a tweet on. But some quick napkin math, they're holding still 566,000 Bitcoin. So at 15,000 a day, that's about 37 more days of this, although I don't think they go to zero. That's speculation as to how much it will sell. You seen all this?
I've seen this, and I can't remember what the figures, because DCG, which is the parent company of Grayscale, owns a certain percentage of the Bitcoin in the trust. A bunch of it's held by private investors and people that invest in the trust, but part of it was owned by the parent company. And so I'm wondering if the selling is from that parent company selling their own holdings of it, because if you guys remember with Gemini and the liabilities that came from the FTX collapse and DCG losing a bunch of money to FTX, about $1 billion worth of money to FTX, whether we see a whole bunch of DCG selling that Bitcoin because it's up now to help pay off some of that Gemini debt or prepare for that Gemini debt.
Yeah, then there was also just the discount to NAV. You could buy it at discounts. People are locking in profits there. But overall, just in terms of looking at the ETF, overall, there are inflows. So there's just selling going on. Even beyond that, maybe it's just the narrative have changed. We're having a little bit of pullback because we had such a strong year so far. There typically is a little bit of a pullback after that much strength in a pre-halving year. It's not uncommon for there to be like a 25-30% pullback. So it may just be a kind of natural occurrence. But in the time that they have sold this 52,000 Bitcoin, BlackRock has added 33,000 Bitcoin, and Fidelity has added 25,000 Bitcoin. And if you add everything up, it's net positive of about 31,000 Bitcoin. So if you take all the ETFs and what they've added in, subtract the 52,000 Grayscale has sold, it is net positive. And we have about a little over $1 billion in new assets under management in the ETF in the first week. So that doesn't really count today. And the volume has been picking up every day. But we'll see when this kind of turns the corner and maybe starts really affecting the price, because these ETFs do have to buy and hold Bitcoin. The other good news...
I actually just want to hop in on that quickly.
Yeah,
because I think this is something that's interesting and important to keep in consideration. Just because there's an inflow on one day, for example, doesn't mean that they're buying Bitcoin that day. I believe that they've got, if I remember right from reading all of the documents, they've got up to 30 days to buy the Bitcoin to back the holdings. It's not a 1 day in, 1 day out type thing. It might be a weekly maneuver and not a monthly, but they've got some time to resettle all of their transactions to be net positive, to mirror what actually happened. And so what we could actually be seeing is we're seeing GBTC being dumped, but the inflows aren't actually picking up new assets yet. Everyone was wondering if BlackRock was going to dump the price of Bitcoin so they could scoop it up for cheap. And this could be exactly what's happening. Although BlackRock isn't selling their Bitcoin, they knew that Grayscale would be, and they're letting the price drop so that they can then scoop in and buy some of theirs at a much lower value or a lower
price. You think buy not necessarily for the ETF, but just for their own investment?
Either or. It could be for the ETF or for their own investments. They're just letting GBTC and Grayscale drive down that price, and then once they feel like Grayscale's done their selling and the price has reached a steady bottom, they'll start buying up and adding more to make sure that they're meeting their backing requirements. And in some way they can actually, it saves them money because someone might have bought a share of the ETF for $42,000 and they end up picking up that one Bitcoin share for $30,000 or $35,000. So there's a $7,000 net positive on BlackRock's balance sheet.
The other kind of gauge people are looking at in terms of the ETF and how successful it is and what it means for Bitcoin is just its total size compared to other ETF categories. So the biggest being gold. It has roughly, not quite, but roughly 100 billion assets under management. And Bitcoin is being heralded as number 2 category because it has now close to 30 billion assets under management, beating out silver, which has around 10 billion, 11.5 billion assets under management. But I think it's important to remember with this one that a big chunk of that was just transferred over from Grayscale. That just happened suddenly. It's not, like we said, there's been about 1.25 billion new, so not even the new Bitcoin and assets under management in the ETFs if you take out Grayscale. So while an interesting number, it will be interesting to see how that grows over the year, over 6 months, over the next couple of weeks. That'll be a number I'll be watching just to gauge its success a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because of that huge transfer from Grayscale. The numbers look so skewed, and so to see that 1.5 billion, it's a little bit more comparable. It gives you a little bit more better of an idea. It's like, okay, no,
what has happened this week?
Yeah, what's happened in the week since the ETFs have come out, and like where are we at a maturity level? If we look at it, we're about a 10x from silver in new money still. And so we need to see a 10x in inflows between now and whenever we pass silver to hit that mark, to actually have a comparable number.
At this pace, and if it picks up steam, it wouldn't necessarily take that long to get there. But like I said, it's something I'll definitely be watching. Not the only ETF news. So rounds it up for the American version of the ETF, but we also had some news out of Hong Kong. Did you see this?
I've heard some talk about the news coming from Hong Kong. There's been whispers and stuff for a while since they passed the regulations in April that there was going to be more products available in Hong Kong. But this week was interesting. You want to break down the details a little bit?
Like the United States, they already have several futures-based crypto ETFs, Samsung, CSOP, some big names in there. But Hashkey, a licensed crypto exchange in Hong Kong, said earlier this month that it was in talks with assets managers exploring the launch of potential spot ETFs. There was another story, Venture Smart Financial Holdings, a Hong Kong-based financial services firm, announced its plan to potentially launch a spot Bitcoin ETF within the first quarter of this year. And that was a report out of Bloomberg. And they see 500 million of assets under management by the end of the year. Paltry sounding numbers, but still. And then we had today a report, Gary Tiu, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it's executive director of OSL, a Hong Kong licensed crypto exchange. And they said that the special administration region could potentially see the issuance of a first spot crypto exchange traded fund by the middle of the year. More and more smoke for the fire. Hong Kong does appear to be paving the way for a spot crypto ETF. The Securities and Futures Commission and the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, the de facto central bank, announced just this last December that both agencies have reviewed their existing policies and published 2 circulars. I'm not sure exactly, but it's some sort of paper addressing the requirements for spot crypto ETFs. So definitely a lot of smoke coming out of Hong Kong in terms of spot Bitcoin ETF.
Yeah, we're seeing them pop up all over the world. We had the EU one start trading in August. We've had this one just happen in the US, and then in 6 months we could be seeing one in Hong Kong, or 3 to 6 months. So that would make it really means Bitcoin's mainstream at that point. If you've got it trading in, I'd say, the big 3 stock markets of the world. That being said, we've also got other news, mainly on the ETH front. ETH has had 2 deadlines come up for their spot ETF in the last week. One today, or one yesterday, and one tomorrow. The one today was basically delayed, and everyone's expecting the same for the one that's coming up on the 24th. So we're seeing some delays, but that's not unexpected, really. The first final deadline is in May, and that's for Van Eck and for ARC 21. But honestly, I could see both of them being rejected, and we see an original grayscale situation and then pushed till the summer sometime when the rest of the other deadlines are.
It's going to take a lawsuit to get them to. So the one rejected yesterday or delayed was Fidelity, and the next one coming up is from BlackRock. We'll definitely get some news. We'll get some Ethereum spot ETF news as this week goes on. Yeah, with the end of May being the first final deadlines, which is what led to the Bitcoin ETF being launched, though. So just having like a final deadline, so definitely something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, but we got to keep in mind the grayscale final deadline was actually the first one, and they had rejected that one, and then grayscale basically resubmitted after the lawsuit to be in order to actually get the approval. It's not really the first final deadline, it's the second final deadline, like the next wave of final deadlines that are important.
They continue the same pattern. I don't know if they want to embarrass themselves again in the courts, but yeah, who knows?
They might feel like they've got better arguments against ETH. That's the thing. That there could be.
It's a whole different asset, that's for sure. So
that's it. So I feel like there might be stronger. They might be able to feel like they can come up with better arguments against ETH than they could against Bitcoin. And I think that is what we should watch for and see what arguments they do end up making if it gets to that point.
Senator Warren is back in the news fighting her anti-crypto fight. There was a report from the Government Accountability Office that she was highlighting and touting it as validating her concerns. So there was a January 21st post on Twitter from her referencing a report from the GAO, the Government Accountability Office out of the U.S., alleging that rogue nations were leveraging cryptocurrency to evade sanctions and pose threats to national security. She's using a lot of big words. A lot of men like, oh, we got to get this thing. National security, rogue nations, terrorists.
Sanctions,
Yeah, just the worst of the worst. Now, Senator Warren has been a vocal critic, so it's not really much of a surprise. However, the crypto community has pushed back. And as part of is basically saying she's oversimplifying this and she's picking out what she wants from this report. But anyway, as part of this GAO report, it also conceded in the report that cryptocurrency's decentralized nature and public ledger system could empower UN agencies to trace such transactions. And this could potentially aid the government in identifying illicit actors involved in such a crime. But yeah, like I said, the crypto community has pushed back, saying the report was used as an excuse to attack the industry as a whole, totally oversimplifies the issues. She even got community noted on X. Anyway,
when does she not anymore? She almost constantly gets community noted at this point.
She's on the attack and just, I don't know. Politicians are used to doing this. They can create the narrative, but she's definitely getting some pushback on X, but maybe not in other places like the mainstream media. But it would serve to eliminate a potential tool for finding those that work around sanctions. It's also just pushing innovation offshore at a burgeoning moment in this industry when it's just starting off. So it's a little disappointing to see that.
Yeah, very disappointing, but not unexpected from Liz Warren. She's been consistent with this pattern, so I'm not surprised. And it's funny. It's great that even the accountability office is like, hey, this could be a useful tool. Yes, it's being used for bad things, but it could be a tool so that we have a better idea of the bad things that are actually going on. You can track them better with the public ledgers rather than you can't track cash transactions. It's impossible. So being able to get on the blockchain, that's fairly easy.
Yeah, they could use it as a trap almost, make people think it's a good way to get around sanctions, and then boom, they got them.
Exactly.
But on another note, I thought it was funny. Then the same week, Warren is also advocating for pay raise for her and all her congressional counterparts. Thought that was fun. If you're enjoying the content, please do consider liking and subscribing. We do appreciate it. You want to get into the macro news?
Yeah, macro wise, we've seen a shift that we were surprised we didn't see last week. It's finally come this week when we look at interest rates. We're now looking at potentially not really seeing a cut for the next 3 meetings, which was not unexpected given the uptick in inflation numbers, both PPI and CPI coming in a little bit over expectations, which wasn't good because we're still in the high threes year over year. That's pretty interesting. And we're also we've seen it shift. So we're talking 60 to 70% of no change in the March meeting. And then the May meeting is still fairly weighted towards no change as well. So that's a huge change when we were talking almost 70% calling for cuts in March just last week.
Yeah, and then we have some other rate cut decisions this week. So next week we get the big Fed rate decision, although it's really the expectation is no change whatsoever. But the Bank of Canada and the central bank out of the European Union, the ECB, they have rate decisions this week, so it'll be interesting to watch that. And we have gross domestic product data out of the USA as well. And the PCE, that's an inflation-related number, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of the Fed's preferred PCE numbers. They like it quite a bit. They like CPI and PPI, but they do tend to favor a little bit the findings in PCE for some reason.
And seeing how much these expectations change just from last week to this week, we know they can change. Seems like we're pretty locked in for no change right now. But when the cuts come, we shall see.
Yeah, I'd love to see when we see those predictions of cuts kind of start feeling a little bit more solid. The swings that we're seeing are pretty dramatic. And so we need to wait and see what happens. I want to hear what he says. What Jerome Powell is going to say at this next rate meeting, I think, is going to be really important to how the market sees the next few months, the next year, really. If he comes in pretty bearish or pretty hawkish, saying we're not seeing cuts maybe till the end of 2024, that could be a pretty hard fact for the market to swallow, especially if he holds that line, or if he's more a little bit on the dovish side, just like we're watching the numbers, we'll make appropriate adjustments as needed, then maybe we see a little bit of a rally. Maybe the market gets a little bit excited because they think he's getting dovish. They're letting go of the higher for longer narrative.
Yeah, I always had this expectation that once they start cutting rate, it's going to churn market sentiment and printers are going to turn on. But the more I've seen about it, my attitude has changed a little bit, and it's more the market tends to turn when they're finished cutting rates. So it's not that first cut. So it looks like this is a headwind that could be around for a little longer than I was initially expecting.
Yeah, it could still be around. I do wonder if we might see a bit of a change this cycle. The cycles always rhyme, but they're never exactly the same. And the reason why I say it might rhyme is everyone's talking about, the market really takes off once they're done cuts. Well, we've seen with this market cycle in Bitcoin and everything, people have been forerunning the traditional cycle. We took off a little bit early in this cycle, and we're dumping a little bit late. And that's really, we're only dumping, at least seemingly, because of the ETF and Bitcoin and GBTC. And now, could people forerun the rate cuts? Do we see the market with this dump and maybe switch from the Fed soon and we start seeing the first few rate cuts? Then the market starts taking off as people anticipate that they'll cut fast and low, get us back down to low interest rates fast.
Yeah, and then we have these 4-year cycles with crypto and with Bitcoin, and people getting more confident in their ability to predict it, trying to front run it a little bit. Makes sense, the narrative a little bit. And every halving year, it's coming like in an earlier month slightly. I don't know if you noticed that, but like each halving is coming a little bit earlier in the year, I guess subtly earlier, maybe changing the sentiment just a little bit.
Exactly. I think that all of those could lead to people front running the market. I'm not going to say everyone's going to start front running it right now. I think everyone's actually trying to front run the dump, oddly enough, pre the halving. And because the halving is still, April, people feel like, I can sell my Bitcoin. I'm up 2x right now, or 2.5x from the bottom, take some profits, wait for everybody to keep dumping into the halving, and then buy pre-halving, and then ride from there, lock in some profits. So it'll be interesting to see if we keep seeing some of that front running in the market with interest rates as well.
How are we looking on time? We've got quite a few little smaller altcoin stories to look into.
We got some time. If you like this kind of content, please consider dropping a like, subscribe, share it with a friend. If you haven't checked out the new airdrop Discord, I know airdrops can be overwhelming. Check out the Discord. We're organizing information, making it super easy. It's free. There's tons of awesome people in there to just chat and hang out. Hop on in if you want.
Now we have if you're doing airdrops or anything in DeFi, or two of the big wallets are Metamask and Rabby wallet. There's some news from both of them. So MetaMask was teasing a token. There's been some rumors about it for a while now. Nothing's ever really come of it. But Rabby Wallet had a very interesting tweet, and it said, "Are you ready for your picture?" or something along those lines. But just like a teaser tweet about a snapshot that was taken or is being taken shortly for a potential airdrop. Did you see that? Do you use Rabby?
I don't use Rabby. But I do know.
I don't either, but I know it's very popular.
It is very popular. A lot of people really like it. I got hooked on MetaMask, and for airdrop farming, Rabby isn't integrated in a lot of spots. And so for me, it's easier to just I have MetaMask, and I've got Phantom, and then I've got Kelper. I've got my 3 wallets for the different blockchains, and it's just easier to do it that way. And then I got my Ledger for anything.
What is the Kepler one for?
That's for Cosmos, the Cosmos ecosystem.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're like, I'd say the Kelper wallet, between the Kelper wallet and Phantom, they're both super easy to use. So I haven't hopped onto Rabby, but I do know some people that got very excited about that tweet.
Really? And I know some people that use it that think it's much more user friendly, just nicer UI, all that stuff. But MetaMask was also in the news. They have a new service where they will run an ETH node for you. If you still got to put up the 32 ETH, so if you're willing to let MetaMask, maybe they got to custody it for you, but you don't have to provide any of the hardware. I'm sure they take a cut somewhere in there. I haven't looked at all the details, but I thought that was an interesting service that they're trying to offer, kind of take out some of the complexity in running an ETH validator node. Just get a hold of some ETH and let MetaMask do it for you.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. They could literally be taking advantage of the EigenLayer restaking, so they could be trying to capitalize on that, or using it to help secure their own blockchain, which is Linea. But yeah, it's super interesting. And considering, like, I have looked at running nodes for smaller projects, testnets and stuff, to help earn more airdrops, and it's technical. So not even just having the hardware, but it's technical to set it up. So them that process for you, pretty interesting when you think
because there's risk involved if you buy all the hardware and then you can't figure out how to do it. You're stuck with this investment that you can't do anything with. You can't figure it out.
That's it. And considering, like, I do see running ETH validator nodes, maybe through EigenLayer restaking is where I see the future of, like, passive income, at least for me, outside of, like, everyone talks real estate, but with EigenLayer potentially returning 10% a year plus on top of the 4.2% from ETH, you're talking 14% a year. That's a pretty good CAGR on top of ETH appreciation. Could be a pretty nice return without having to deal with tenants or anything like that.
Yeah, have zero interest in running a validator node, but I don't know that I have. It's a little outside my 32 ETH and potentially giving the custody over to Metamask, that would also make me nervous. But not for everybody. It has its pluses and minuses, I think, but probably just outside my budget on a couple of different levels.
Oh, it's
But
outside my
Phantom,
budget right now. It's outside my budget right now, that's for sure.
yeah. Phantom had some validator news too. They have slashed their requirements. It used to take 500K Phantom. So that was the requirement to run a validator node. And their prices come down quite a bit and maybe more accessible to people who wanted to try it. But they reduced that requirement to 50K Phantom. So much more affordable if you wanted to try and run a validator node and get into that. It seems like maybe that might be an angle to take with Phantom. A little bit less risk, less of an initial investment.
Oh, for sure. A lot of test nets you can run validators on if you want to start experimenting with them and with little to no risk. And it's interesting to see Phantom. Maybe they need more security on their blockchain, and that's why they're getting more. They're cutting the requirements to try and entice more people. I think
It's being too centralized over there.
Yeah, you need validators to have security, and maybe their amount is just getting low, and that's
There
very
was
possible.
some hype around Phantom in the last kind of bull market. They've been very quiet during the bear market, though. This is some of the first news I've heard out of them.
Yeah, Andre Kroniak, who is like the founder of Phantom and the moving figure, even though he's not the CEO of the company anymore, he's come back a few times now, and I think he's back right now. So, but I know he was gone for a good part of the bear market too. The pressures of running Phantom and just the amount of weight that the community puts on him definitely seems to mess with his head.
I'll keep a little side eye on him. I'm not making any crazy moves. I don't really have a lot of use case for Phantom personally. I like to have kind of the ability to use it if I wanted to, if I'm buying tokens like that. But that's just me, not financial advice. Frax has a layer 2 that will launch in the first week of February. So some news around that ecosystem a little bit. We also have Injective. The last Injective token unlock ever just happened. I thought that was very interesting news. Typically, this token has not been around that long, and the fact that all their unlocks are done.
It's been around a fair bit, but yeah, they got all the unlocks, which is I think even more bullish on the price, especially considering their mainnet hasn't even launched yet. Their mainnet's launched, but most of the projects on their mainnet haven't launched yet. They're still in testnet phase. So you're about to, it is one of the more bullish ecosystems for me, both in terms of potential price appreciation in this market, but also for airdrops. It's one of the first guides I dropped in the community on Discord for everybody to follow along with.
Yeah, I don't own any Injective, but one of the things when I was researching, pumped quite a bit. Its price is up compared to bottom of the bear market, but it doesn't have that multi-cycle effect that kind of that kind of puts a cap on the upside. You could really get into some wild price discovery mode potentially compared to some other tokens that are down and maybe never will come back up or have that kind of potential up. So definitely one I'll be doing a little bit more research on. Our final little note here, it's your favorite guy in the world, Trump. Donald Trump has a couple of NFT collections on Ethereum, or an NFT collection with a couple of series, something like that. He is not a particularly pro crypto candidate. He is very much anything that is not America first, goes against the dollar. He's not going to be for. So he's against Bitcoin in that sense. However, he does have NFT collections and he does use the ecosystem to a certain degree. And he's going to be putting on his mugshot. He's got a famous mugshot. He's going to do an NFT edition as a BTC ordinal. So that was pretty fast.
He's got a really smart person working on his team. There's someone on his staff that is really smart and savvy that's working for him behind closed doors, because to launch it as an ordinal and everything, they've got to be tuned in. That's next level.
Ordinals, a lot of people in the NFT space are ordinals is the next big wave. It's all going to be on the BTC blockchain. This is where all the high end stuff's going to be. This is all speculative right now. We'll see how it all plays out. But yeah, he may be anti-crypto to a certain degree, anything that's not pro-US dollar, but to see him utilize the blockchain definitely makes him a more pro-crypto candidate than any other, compared to like Biden per se. If you're voting just on crypto, it's hard not to get a little bit excited. Like, you may be able to change his minds a little easier than the Biden administration and the Elizabeth Warrens of the world that support the Biden administration.
Yeah, who knows? We'll see. It's interesting, very interesting to see how tapped in he is to the network, even though he does not seem to be at least very pro crypto or Bitcoin or anything like that. It's interesting, to say at least the least.
I know, not your favorite guy, but anyway, I give him a little love for throwing some stuff on the blockchain.
Fair.
More than a lot of these candidates are doing.
Yeah. No, it's next level engagement with the crypto community, that's for sure. That being said, I don't think we've got anything else to cover today, so I want to thank everybody that's watched this video up until now and has been following the channel. Remember, this is not financial advice. We're not financial advisors. Please do your own research and tune in next week. We're going to be bringing more awesome news, more airdrops, more everything to everybody who watch the channel and who are tuned into the space. If you want more on airdrops, go check out the free Discord community. It's linked in the description, and see you guys next time. Bye.
See you next week. Bye now.